The city of San Francisco is many things to many people. To the wealthy, sophisticated urbanite, it's Victorian elegance, good theater, fine restaurants. To the middle-class suburbanite, the city is a place to work, to shop, a convenient and stimulating source of culture and recreation, but a place from which to escape each night. Yet there are thousands to whom the city is neither exciting nor rewarding. They are the slum dwellers, trapped by poverty, ignorance, and bigotry in crowded, crumbling ghettos. To them, the city is a cruel and dangerous maze with few exits. Diggs was born 52 years ago in an obscure Texas hamlet near Houston. He and his family, including a wife and 5 small children, immigrated to San Francisco 10 years ago in search of a better life.
I got to San Francisco on a Wednesday morning. My family had already been here for a while, and then I was to come on later. And when I got to San Francisco, I was really disappointed because I thought I would see something different. I don't know what I expected to see myself. And I was so disappointed then, I wanted to go back right then. My wife, she wanted to come, and her relatives was here, and she thought the children would have more opportunity in school. That's mostly what we were interested in, the children's affair. And so that's why we really came.
The children are mostly grown up now. One daughter is married, a son is in the Army, another son lives away from home. Last October, Louis Diggs' wife, Maureen, passed away after a succession of heart attacks. Only a 14-year-old daughter, Cherie, and a 16-year-old son, Joe, remain at the flat on Fell Street.
I don't think it has been a problem of bringing up the kids. It just hasn't been very pleasant. Of the struggle we had. We haven't had the chance to go, say, out on a lot of picnics and outings, to go hunting and to go fishing. That's what my children always wanted to do. We haven't had the money to do that, and I think this has made things a little more now to where the family is a dull family, I would say. Life has been dull for that reason.
Louis Diggs' eldest son, Larry, is 20 years old and hardly the typical product of the slums. He's had some college, been to Europe, writes music, and earns a meager living as a youth counselor for a local anti-poverty agency. Although Larry does not live at home, he is nearby and helps support the family.
He's just as much now obedient as he was when he was 12 years old. I can say, Larry, do this or do that, whatever I tell him. I mean, he does it. Joe, he had started this kind of wanting to be in the streets. He's been always a child that liked to go. And as he get older, he thinks that, he's becoming a man, and he doesn't have to ask things as much as he used to have to ask. Of course, more since his mother has been gone, because he's been lonesome for her, and he is really trying to find something that he probably can't find. Cherie is a hard child. I'm thinking about it. I'm going to have to send her to psychiatrist. She's hard to understand because she won't talk. And anything that you ask her, she don't know.
Larry frequently drops by the Fell Street apartment to check on his father's health, which has not been good, and to see that his brother and sister get off to school. Although they're very different in their attitudes, Larry has a deep understanding of and affection for his father.
I could talk to my father, or he was there, and he presented an image for me. He's never, some families have had the misfortune of having their fathers go to jail. I've even known people to go to jail for stealing like 4 or 5 loaves of bread, because, you know, you got to have some food. But at the same time, like my father could understand cars, he didn't understand human beings that well. He wasn't able to cope with them.
Cherie Diggs is an 8th grader at Zion Lutheran Parochial School in the Richmond district. It's a long way from home, and the tuition is a hardship. But Cherie is a poor student. Her parents hoped she would do better here than in public school. Zion Lutheran is predominantly white and middle class. Having grown up in a ghetto, Cherie feels handicapped and defensive.
At the school I'm going to now, where everybody's the same, you know, I don't think there's any prejudice among anybody. So for a few kids, they act that way sometimes. In the class that I'm in, there's 4 Negro girls. Most Negro kids, they don't actually like Caucasian kids. They say they're different, and they try to be more popular, and because they don't do some of the things that they do. Well, like if they don't listen to the same radio station you listen to, then they say they're different, they're square and everything, and they really don't take to it too good.
Racial discrimination is an insidious evil. It need not be overt to be destructive. The U.S. Supreme Court recognized this when it ruled that separate but equal schools could never be truly equal so long as they remain separate. But even in a presumably integrated system, discrimination can be brutally effective. Larry Diggs learned this early in life at the integrated Andrew Jackson Elementary School.
Let's say, for instance, I went down to talk with a white girl for some reason. You know, usually you just didn't do it because after a while you got the picture. Then the teacher would find some reason that you should be playing. Of course, it was okay if you were talking to a Negro girl. They didn't care whether you played or not. There was always the differentiation, line drawn between the Negroes and white, because, of course, everybody knows that all white kids are smart, right? And then all the white kids would sit up right in front of the teacher. It just was sort of bombarded into my subconscious that in order to get away, you know, to get ahead, one had to be white. But every time that I would have a dream or think of myself in, you know, something good happening, that I would always be white, you know, like I would dream of myself and I was a white boy. In other words, the image of success was white.
Larry's younger brother, Joe, is a 10th grader at George Washington High School, Larry's old alma mater. But Joe is not doing well. His attitude toward education vacillates between hostility and indifference, increasing his sense of isolation and failure. He talked with KRON-TV.
I'm just not putting myself to it. I mean, I'm not studying, not too much, not enough. I don't realize this, so, I mean, you know, I don't know why I don't study. In a way, the hardest part is going home.
Home is where Louis Diggs spends most of his time. For him, too, it's a melancholy place, a shabby refuge from a life of hard times and unfulfilled dreams.
Just turn the radio on, listen to the radio. That's all I have there now. I think it's been quite a change in the time since I was a teenager or a young man coming up. I wanted to be a traveler and see what the world was like. I wanted to make a lot of money, and that's what I dreamed about. I've always liked to make money. The children was very much devoted to my wife, and of course she was the big ramrod. She was the boss, the house, and everybody, including me, had to do what she said. She always was striving to do something better. We didn't have a piano. We took some of the grocery money and went out and bought a piano. The church didn't pay it any attention, however, and so these things pile up, and first thing you know, you owe a couple of $1,000 that you can't pay, and still you have to go in and eat and buy clothes. So this is the thing that had made the struggle a little harder than normally would have been, because we tried to have everything that everybody else had and was poor. I've been used to that all of my life. It's poor people. I mean, it doesn't now. I owe bills now, and it doesn't make me feel bad. I just feel like the people sympathize with me and go on. All I have to do is just tell them my troubles, and we'll make some kind of arrangements. That's the way I live.
A recent study by the U.S. Department of Labor points out what every ghetto dweller knows instinctively, that while unprecedented numbers of Negroes are entering the middle class, life is getting harder for those still trapped in the slums. The median income of San Francisco's 20,000 slum families is $4,200 a year, more than $2,000 below the national average. Half of these families are Negro, and 20% exist below the $3,000 per year poverty line set by the federal government. The Labor Department reported recently that unemployment in the slums of San Francisco is so much worse than it is in the country as a whole that the national measurements of unemployment are utterly irrelevant. An estimated 1/4 of the people are unable to earn a decent living. Louis Diggs is one of the 25%. For several years now, he's not held a steady job. Part of the reason is poor health. But he's one of an army of unskilled workers in San Francisco who are either chronically unemployed or who exist from day to day doing odd jobs for menial wages. Louis Diggs has long since given up hope of anything better.
I was here a few weeks and I found me a little janitorial job. It really wasn't enough pay, and I knew quite a lot of things to do myself on my own, and so I finally bought me a little car and I started working on my own. I do a lot of say maintenance, mechanical work, and I had a lot of difficulties because a lot of things that I could do, you're supposed to have license to do, and people, of course, they found out you didn't have a license, and they didn't want to pay you because you wasn't in the union. Oh, it was hard to get in unions to do the things that I like to do, could do best, and so I still didn't do too much better.
Frustration and failure are endemic in the slums and transmitted like a grim heritage to the young. Larry Diggs, as a youth for service worker, learned how widespread was the despair among the youth of the Western Addition.
Negroes don't feel that they can do the things that they of course are able to do. Let's say, for instance, the youth that I work with, I'll bring them in and they will fill out an application and for a job, and I say, what do you want to be? And the kid will say something to me, well, I like to be a janitor or a nurse's aide or something like this. So what you have is a continuation of janitors, and you never hear a person saying, why don't you be an electrician? Have you thought about being a technician? Have you thought about being a politician? My mother, she taught us that Negroes were equal, but I can remember times when she says, not realizing that she was contradicting herself. In other words, she would say, like you're going too high, you're reaching for too high goals.
Larry's younger brother, Joe, has additional cause for discouragement. Doctors recently discovered that he suffers from a serious congenital heart defect. Once an avid and promising athlete, Joe Diggs has been permanently benched. Nor will he be able to pursue a military career like his brother Michael.
After school, I just like to walk around by myself, walk through the park. I try to make myself and convince myself that I'm going to settle down and study, and get good grades and be something or somebody, And this is the only way I could do it by, just being by myself. The average Negro teenage boy, being from a poor family, he would maybe think that he couldn't possibly socialize with the middle class or the fairly well Negroes or whites because he would fear they would look down on him. So therefore, it will lead him to think that everyone's against him. He fails classes and soon he gets fed up and he drops out of school. He doesn't get a job. He has to turn to some other source of income, maybe robbing, stealing, or, things of the sort. But I think I've finally convinced myself after thinking about this, that I gotta do better.
It was surprising how many kids actually wanted to be, when they grew up, pimps and prostitutes. Because what do you see when you go out on the street? Your clothes are always ragged. You don't have any food. But it always looks like the pimp, who is always driving around in a long Cadillac or something, man, he's really got it made. This represents social prominence. There was a time when I wanted to break away from everything. And I say, wait a minute, am I running away? Am I saying that I don't want to be a black person? Then I found that maybe I was trying to run away from the black stereotype.
Larry did break away. For nearly a year, he lived with a group of young musicians, all of them white. The experience taught him a lot about himself and the world outside the ghetto.
I got to know a lot about middle-class people, enough to know that I don't really want to live in the Richmond and Sunset District. I can't say that their basic hang-ups as human beings are really that much different from Negro hang-ups. It's just that they're on top, they're the haves, and the Negroes, by and large, are the have-nots. Time when there was hardly any money in the house, times when someone was in the house was very, very sick, and we all experienced the same grief or sadness together. That this type of living together builds one, you just feel that, hey, wow, I'm just, we all feel the same thing. Now I realize more that people can live together if they try, and if they decide that, sure, we're going to live together, and we got to. But I feel that one of the big problems is that people don't want to work at that.
Larry Diggs has resolved some of his early conflicts about being a Negro. He no longer seeks to...
I feel like I can just drop out of the whole scene completely, and say, well, it's not my problem, like many other Negroes can do, But I don't feel that I could be comfortable as a human being knowing that the guys that I grew up with, are out there scuffling and somebody's shooting them in the back, and they're very confused and they don't know which direction they're going to. The Negro community always feels suppressed. You're always really uptight. You're always ready to do, punch somebody. But it's like people are always very despondent. They're always down. and it has the effect of being very lethargic, making you not want to get up in the morning because you can't see your way clear. You know, it's like being so far down that down looks like up.
After school, Cherie Diggs cares for the young son of a working relative and shops for the evening meal. Like all youngsters her age, Cherie is searching for an adult identity and is frequently discouraged by the hard facts of life she observes around her. She explains why for KRON-TV.
Most Negro women have it hard. When we first came out here, my mother didn't spend a lot of time with us because we were smaller and she had to work most of the time all night and all day. And we was there at the house by herself with my older sister. And the kids really have it hard because, you know, they feel as if their parents don't care, so they do what they want.
The Diggs family tries to gather for dinner as often as possible. But the center of gravity that once kept the family together, Mrs. Diggs, is gone. And so they find themselves drifting apart. Dinner time these days is mostly a time for memories.
I can remember sitting at the table, the whole family, and there would be nothing on the table, but we'd set the table and just sit there. And it wasn't like in protest to not having any food. It was just that, well, first place, my mother thought it was, you know, dinner was a time when everybody should be together, even if you didn't have any food. So we did it, you know, sort of ceremony, I guess you might say. And of course, my father would come in, and not having any money must have really, you know, blew his mind, stuff like that. Distinctly, the look on his face when knowing that, or feeling that he was somewhat less than a man simply because he could not provide, and simply because he worked really hard, but he could never get ahead. Then many nights when, you know, I'd come in, let's say, to talk to him about something, and I've seen him like on his knees crying many times. I want to stay in the ghetto and help those that I can and contribute something. Not that I feel that I have all that much to offer, but whatever I have to offer, that's what I want to give that much.
Shortly after these films were made, Louis Diggs gave up the flat on Fell Street. He could no longer afford the $110 a month rent. Joe moved in with his brother Larry, who subsequently lost his job with Youth for Service because of a cutback in funds from Washington. Cherie was sent to live with friends. She was withdrawn from Zion Lutheran School because there was no money for tuition. There is no happy ending for the family on Fell Street, but then happy endings are rare in the slums of San Francisco. Assignment 4 is brought to you in the community interest by the documentary department of KRON-TV. Be with us again for our next report to the West on Assignment 4.